मूर्तिभेद विभागिने
मूर्तिभेद विभागिने
व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय
व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय
दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः.
Dakshinamurtaye Namaha.
Okay, so once we do all of us the first sloka, then it will become easy for us and we can simultaneously do it instead of me first reading it and you doing it. So, first, a few starting words. We have already done Viveka Chudamani and we have done Bhagavad Gita, where we have dealt in detail with a lot of concepts from Vedanta in the context of Bhagavad Gita, and we have discussed that. As such, fully focused on Advaita Vedanta, we have done while we were discussing, Tattva Bodha, Atma Bodha, and then we had done Viveka Chudamani. In Viveka Chudamani also, that is perhaps a little deeper kind of a text compared to AparokshaAnubhuti. But AparokshaAnubhuti is a simpler, more straightforward text which focuses on a few key points. Viveka Chudamani is a little more dense. It has more concepts, more ideas, more uh, you know cross correspondence with the Upanishadic statements. So that is much richer in terms of concepts and ideas. Aparoksha Anubhuti, by that standard, perhaps would be an intermediate level, but nevertheless is extremely good at focusing on the fundamental questions of Vedanta. However, this is a little more advanced than the ones we did earlier, Tattvabodha and Atmabodha. Tattvabodha, Atmabodha kind of introduce you to the key ideas. Viveka Chudamani at once brings in so many things. In Viveka Chudamani, generally people who are sannyasis, they read that because they want to inspire and keep themselves motivated all the time. Aparaksha Anubhuti, on the other hand, could be read by all to get a comprehensive grasp, to get hold of the basic message of the philosophy of Advaita Vedanta. And what is Advaita Vedanta all about? Because we have a few new friends, and even though we have discussed a lot of concepts, I just wanted to put it in the context that what we mean by spirituality. In our everyday lives, we have a lot of activities starting from morning to night. We have a few activities like maybe, we do some prayer in the morning. As soon as we wake up from bed, we pray. Maybe while going to bed, we pray. We maybe after doing, your daily ablutions, you quickly have a puja or a meditation for a few minutes because, oh, I see, not able to hear my voice. Is my voice audible, or I'll speak a little louder? Is it audible?
I can hear
Okay.
perfectly.
You can maybe increase the phone volume. Otherwise, I can use, from tomorrow onwards, I can use that headphone. So generally then what happens is that we have certain activities we can describe as religious or spiritual. And if you categorize different kinds of people, different kind of practices, you would see that some people more often than not associate spirituality with activities like, let's say, going to the temple, meditation, doing a puja and stuff like that. These are all theistic activities which remind us of a few things, that there is something beyond what we see. Maybe there's God, maybe there's afterlife, maybe we are not in control of our lives. In very simple terms, it opens us up to a reality which is not quickly, easily available to our ears and eyes, to our senses, whose existence nevertheless has an influence on how we are pursuing our lives, we are successful or we are not successful. And then some people also now have different explanations as to why these things are useful, because there are a lot of psychological studies are going on in different universities. They have also found that this kind of activities kind of give you better control over how you manage your stress, anxieties, uncertainties, your coping capacity, your ability to cope with the changes, alterations in the experience of your own life improves. That could be one practical, you know, region or explanation as to why some people do engage in these activities. But most importantly, they believe that there is a supreme lord or there's a god whom he needs to connect with for his or her own benefit. But very interestingly, there are certain modes of spirituality where the emphasis is not too much on rituals, on a karma kandas, prayers and meditation, stuff like that. They believe that you are better off if you have a more clearer understanding of life or clearer understanding of reality as it is. Maybe the way we understand it is not a sufficient, adequate way of understanding it. There could be some problem. The problem doesn't lie with how we look and what we have. It may have something to do with how we grasp this reality. These approaches are what is now sort of in the academic circles referred to as wisdom oriented approaches. They are about having right kind of samaj, as they say in Hindi, having the right understanding, the wisdom approaches. They are not overtly theistic. Now, if you look at a character like, say, Confucius, did he believe in an individual God? Maybe he didn't. They did some worship of the hereditary, the souls and stuff like that. They do ancestor worship in China. They have a beyond, but what about Zen, which is very popular in parts of East Asia and Japan? Zen is dhyana, shan, it's been meditation, meditative, not about sitting tightly, but about analyzing and understanding. So Zen thinking, similarly, they are very short, beautiful stories. You must have. They are available on the YouTube. They are available everywhere. These stories also sort of hint at a superior understanding of how otherwise we deal with reality. If you look at Buddhism, if you look at Jainism, if you look at in our own tradition, Sankhya talks about Viveka Khyasi, the misunderstanding that our consciousness has that this is this body and it has to live with this whole material and non-material reality is where the problem starts. The Sankhya is Seshwara and Nirishwara. The Kapila Sankhya is largely Nirishwara Sankhya. There is no concept of God. The first extremely secular philosophy which emerged in India where there was no reference to God as such, but then it talked about also liberation. It talked about the agonies in life that we want to overcome. And if you look at, say, Nyayayikas, they do believe in a God. They believe in a God. They believe in Ishvara, which creates. They do prayers, but many of the Nyayayikas, a lot of them were. So in Nyaya philosophy, you will also have people who are wisdom oriented, but largely they are also theistic. They are mostly theistic. But all these schools of thought are not oriented towards rituals, meditations, and prayers the way traditionally we associated associate with normal everyday religious behavior. If you look at Kashmiri Shaivism again, it's more of an intellectual or wisdom oriented approach. Vedanta would fit into this wisdom oriented approach. That is the brief thing I wanted to mention, because a lot of people think if I read Vedanta, am I going to be a Nastika? Am I going to be somebody who becomes an atheist, will not believe in God? It's dry intellectualism. No, it is not. This is for those who are keen on wisdom. A Zen monk who is definitely absolutely not trapped in samsara and sitting and meditating and living an isolated, quiet life. He has some understanding which is radically different from the way we understand life. Similarly, Vedanta talks about a certain kind of wisdom. Here, however, you remember any philosophy, whether it's wisdom oriented or it's God oriented, this is always born in a historical context. So here we will have to deal with, in our thing, we will deal with what? We'll deal with our historical context in which the Vedanta philosophy has emerged. And therefore, there'll be some reference to Varna Ashrama, the social system, and the Karma Kandas, the rituals, because that is what existed then. And therefore, this philosophy would have some cross references, but the central message is not lost there. Having said that, then what this Vedanta is going to teach us and what is this book AparokshaAnubhuti is all about? We'll start with this very first sloka itself is saying. Let's start with the name. What is the meaning of this word aparoksha? What is paroksha? We read about history and we know about what happened in the Vedic civilization or in the Indus civilization, in Maya civilization in America. We do not experience them directly. We hear about them. We read about them. That is what we call Paroksha Jnana. Okay? So that is what is Paroksha Jnana. What is Aparoksha Jnana is what is direct knowledge. Now, if I'm looking at this pen, there's a pen right in front of me, I'm looking at it. When I say direct perception or Pratyaksha Jnana, how is it different? This is Pratyaksha because I'm seeing through my eyes, through my sense organs, this particular object. The Brahma Jnana, however, is not direct perception the way I'm looking at the pen, because as we have discussed that while doing Viveka Chudamani, the knower, the known, and the process of knowing become one in Vedanta. Because Kevala Advaita, that there is only one thing and that is pure consciousness, as the way the Vedas say, the Upanishads say, the Shruti Vakyas, we cannot have dualities. The only thing that sort of liberates us, the only thing that can liberate us is that comprehensive understanding that there is only one pure good thing which all of us are. We are not outside of it. If there's only one thing, obviously we all are subsumed. We all appear as different. So that Brahma Jnana is an exceptional concept here. That is why it becomes so difficult to grasp. Because we have grown up studying about reality, theory of knowledge, knowing, largely in the Western tradition and in everyday life. When we know something is outside of our consciousness and then we use our senses to know it, we can see it. Vedanta talks about a very radical alternative in which the knowledge we are talking about is not different from the knower and the known, because it's only one thing that exists, and that is this Chaitanya Satta Swarupa. It creates a lot of confusions. How do you validate it? Who validates? What are the filters? These things will be relevant before we reach there. That is what it says. So that is just to keep, park it in your minds. because that is what this text will explain to us in detail. That is number one. Number two, if Brahman is Nitya, we have discussed that in Vivekeshwaramani and in Atmabodh. The first sentence in Tattvabodh is Nitya Nitya Vastu Vivekaha. Nitya and Anitya. What is Nitya? Trikala Vadhyatvam. It should exist without any constraints or limitations. By past, present, and future, it will not cease to exist. Remember the verse number 16 of the chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavad Gita. So it has Trikala Vadhyatvam, or there are other ways to look at it called Desa Kala Vastu Paricheda Sunyam. Desataha Kalataha Vastutaha Na Simitaha. It's not limited, restricted by location, by time, or by its own physical formation, or by its own formation. It's not restricted. And there is no two, there is only one. So again, this is Sajatya Vijatya Bheda Rahita, Swagata Bheda Rahita. So these are called prakriyas in Vedanta, in our philosophy. What is prakriya? Prakriya is a philosophical explanatory tool to explain how the reality is. As I have told you earlier, it's a kind of disclaimer that there will be a few concepts and ideas coming which you may find, what is this? Why are we dealing with so much of philosophy? That kind of thing may come to you. So I'm just alerting in advance that we have to live with it, because this is wisdom oriented. So obviously you must have a bit of free orientation to deal with this aspect. So the first verse now, this we know before any text starts. In our parampara, we deal with what is called Anubandha Chatushtaya. What is Anubandha Chatushtaya? What is the Vishaya Vastu? What are we talking about? And if we are talking about something, then we must be able to explain why are we talking about it? What is the purpose? That is Prayojana. Vishaya Prayojana. You want to study physics? Why do you want to study physics? You want to do research. You want to do computer science? Why are you so interested in it? Why are you interested in computer science, not in medicine? So you have a prayojana. You have a specific need as to why you want to get into a certain subject. What is the subject about? What is the need? What is the rationale behind our jumping into the subject? And then what? Are we ready? Are we capable of doing it well? And that is called adhikara. Adhikara is always yogyata in our tradition. Whether we have the qualification. Can we do that course? So if you're doing computer science, they will ask, okay, you haven't done mathematics, then you have to do some extra papers. You have to finish these credits. Then only you're qualified to get into this. Just because you want to get into AI, you can't get in there. They would say these are the qualifications you need to have, not in terms of degrees, but in terms of certain cognitive intellectual skills. And then what? Sambandha. So what is the sambandha they would have? The prayojana and the vishaya sambandha. The relation between prayojana, the need, is it fulfilling? If you look at the text, pratipadya, pratipadaka sambandha, what is the pratipadya vishaya? What is he trying to explain? And what are the slokas? Are they actually relating to them properly? So these are sambandhas. In the first verse, if you look at it, all these are given. So let's unravel the first verse. Sri Harim. So first is the meaning. I am going to deliver these talks in the light of the very famous Advaita Vedanta Acharya, who has written a very famous book called Prakarana Dwadasi. They are combined, where he has, mostly in many of these texts, these are kind of put together, Prakarana Granthas. Prakarana Granthas are introductory books to sort of take us deep into Vedanta. Some of them are very difficult. And this AparokshaAnubhuti, Vidyaranya Muni, who wrote Panchadasi, and is a great scholar from Karnataka, he has written a commentary called Deepika. So this Deepika is a way of explaining how the text is written and what it means. I will not be getting into the Sanskrit text to bore you, you'll lose interest, but I will be taking the key ideas from that book. Okay, so these talks will be delivered in the light of Vidyaranya Muni's Deepika in English. Sometimes I would be reading it. So first, let's unravel the meaning of the word Sri Hari. Why is this word Sri Hari? So he's explaining to start with. It's very beautiful. Why should you do this Mangalacharana? Writes a few words I'm learning. Nirvighna Grantha Samaptaye. Without vignas, you want to finish this book. So we always had this prayer to make. And you remember these good old days where schools used to have prayer sessions. So you do a prayer before the classes used to start, so that everything happens, because you're always sort of connecting with the divinity. Now, if anybody says that Vedanta is completely non-theistic, not so, because you see, there is a prayer in the very beginning. The supreme authority of all of us is connecting. And ultimately, they will say nothing exists but only Atma. And we know that how that happens, the prakriya, adhyaropa and apavada. First, you have a hypothesis, then you go beyond the conclusions of that hypothesis to the next level. So Sri Harim, beautifully he's mentioning that. What is this? For Siksha Sisyaye, Sikshaye. So you have these disciples, the teacher also prays, the students also pray. We are doing a satsang. It's not that I know everything. I've just read this text in advance. That's it. We are doing a good discussion. And he's saying he's doing Sri Hari. Now he's saying Sri Harim Paramanandam Upadestaram Ishwaram. These are all Ditya Vibhaktis. To him, Paramanandam, Paramanandam ko, Sri Hari ji ko, Upadestaram ko. So, what are the meaning of these key words? Because they are very loaded with meaning. Sri Hari, that's a very beautiful thing. He's saying, Atra ayam prakriya, iyam prakriya. This is the way you understand. So he's now introducing all of Vedanta in a few sentences, which are like gems. Without getting into any difficulty, you are getting key ideas of Vedanta in this commentary. It's very rich. First, what he says, do you know, my boys? He's saying, Padartha Dvidaha Atma Anatma Cheti. So when you say reality or Padartha, what is Padartha? We know that. When I say Kalamaha, this is Pada and this is Artha. Padartha is this pen. Padartha means what is referred to through words. That is material reality, or you can call it just reality. So that reality is Dvibidha of two types. What is Atma, Anatma? Why is he mentioning this? Because what did we study in Tattvabodha? The whole discrimination, the ability to cognitively divide things, to have correct understanding, you have to have the ability to distinguish Atma from Anatma. And you know, in Bhagavad Gita, in so many words, they said, the simplest way to understand is, whatever is yours is not you. Only you is Atma thing, right? And this Atma is no different from Paramatma. Ultimately, that Chaitanya is reflected in us and it appears like a jiva. It's like the sun getting reflected on yellow water which is mixed with turmeric powder. It looks like a yellowish sun. And then there is a pot filled with pinkish water on a holy. It looks like a pink sun. The sun doesn't have any colors. So we are looking at ourselves as unique and different because we are not being able to distinguish the real sun from what's reflected in us, in our consciousness, through our behavior, which becomes evident as our gunas, our pahapunyas, they are coming out. And we are not being able to look at the real sun. So therefore, he's saying Atma, Atma, and Anatma. So these two words will come again and again. There is Atma, is because that Drik Drishya Viveka is also, there's another book. The seer, the perceiver is that Atma. that is perceived, everything that is seen, that you're connecting with is anatma. Self and non-self. Everything other than the self is non-self. Now self will be many, all of us, you, me. They'll say, yes, all these individual selves are nothing but, you know what, we have that experience, that space inside this pen, space in the computer, space in you, space in me is space. After we die, what happens to the space which is kind of containing this body? No, it was always space, it remains space. So these are the ways in which Vedanta explains away non-permanence in us while asserting that there is permanence in us. So if we keep our eyes fixed on the consciousness aspect, the light aspect, the truth aspect, we are permanent. We are not going anywhere. What's not going anywhere? The body? No. It can't stay. Bhagavan told Arjuna, what are you bothered about? Your sthula sarira cannot be retained. Shukshma sarira immediately cannot be destroyed. So far you don't have Atma-jnana. What are you cribbing about? So this Atma Anatma, primary distinction. Then Tatra Atma Dvividaha. Atma is again of two types. You know why he has to say this? Otherwise, he will not be able to explain to us what is the difference between God and human beings. Both are Atma. There is Atma aspect to both of us. There is Atma aspect to the whole samsara, the Adhisthana, the foundation. That easiness is Atma Tattva. Whatever appears, whatever is diverse, Anatma aspect. Therefore, he says, what? Tatra Atma Devidaha Ishvara Jivasyeti. This consciousness, Atma. My dear friends, please understand, there is Jiva and Ishvara. I told you Jiva, Jagat, Ishvara. These are the three aspects we need to unravel to be able to go on the path, to undertake a journey on the path of self-discovery. We need to understand these terms. Therefore, he nicely explains that Ishvara Jivasya iti eto api dvividhau suddha vedat. Now, this Suddha and Asuddha Vedat. So that means what is he going to do? Chaitanya is there, okay? Everything is Atma, everything is Chaitanya. In Vedanta, there is only one thing, Ekameva Advitiyam. Then how do we explain diversity? That is the wisdom we are targeting. So how do we explain? What they say is, Avidya Upahita Chaitanya is Jiva, Maya Upahita Chaitanya is Ishvara. But again, at the level of Ishvara or the Niyanta, they will split again into Suddha and Asuddha. Ishvara is Suddha compared to us because Suddha Sattva Sampanna. We are Malina Sattva Sampanna. We did that in Tattvabodha and Atmabodha. Malina Sattva is what? Our Sattvikata, that Trigunatmika Maya, is loaded with Rajas and Tamas in addition to some Sattva we have. We did that in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 14, and then chapter 7. We did that, and then the Sraddhatraya Vibhaga Yoga. We did that at long lengths, isn't it? So, these three qualities or dispositions called Tamas, Rajas, and Sattva, where you have an overload of Tamas and Rajas, it's Malina Sattva. Therefore, we are contradicted, we are conflicted. We are good, but there is a load of badness in us. In Ishvara, these things, weaknesses are not there. So he is Suddha Sattva Sampanna, that is Maya. But what is Vedanta talking about here? If Ishvara, you stop there, which all religions stop at Ishvara. Whether it is Christianity or it's Islam, or I'm not talking about the Eastern wisdom-oriented Buddhism, Jainism, no. But all others, they stop at Ishvara, God. Vedanta goes one step further, and Buddhism bypasses God altogether. It straightway goes to their own understanding in Buddha nature. Not much different from the Vedantic idea, what is Param Brahman. So anyway, we are first persons, speaking in two different languages, but largely hitting at non-duality, as they call it. Now, here we go to understand one simple thing, that even that Ishvara Tattva, or that above thing that we are talking about, which is not immediately available to us, because of Suddha and Asuddhatva can be split into two. This pure Suddha Chaitanya, absolute, doesn't have Maya. What is it? That is Brahman. It's Nirguna, Nirakara, Nishkriya, Nitya, Suddha, Buddha, Mukta, Swabhavaha. No adjectives will fit in there. There is no sambandha because that is ekam eva advitiyam. To have any relationship, you need to, one cannot do. That's why, in Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad, there is beautiful sentence, ekakina ramate, you cannot love alone. And God was very alone, so he was very lonely, so he created this sansara. To have sambandha, bhakta, bhagwan sambandha. Like a young man, he's on a holiday, he's there, he's studying somewhere. He's terribly lonely. He calls up his friends. He meets somebody, becomes friendly. Why? No serious purpose. Needs to talk to somebody. That's what happens. They say, but in Param Brahman, the sambandha is not possible to imagine because that alone is there. That alone. There is no alternative. There is no duality, nothing. Therefore, he says, Suddham, Suddha, Suddha Vedat. Suddha is that, Suddha Chaitanya is Param Brahman. There is no guna, that is nirguna. You see, the Christian God, the Islamic God, they are all saguna nirakara. They don't have physical form. Bible says you shall not worship any likeness. But Jesus is all loving. Allah is all loving, merciful. These are gunas. Brahman doesn't have any of these things. It subsumes everything. When all these adjectives are dropped, what remains is that pure consciousness. Therefore, actually, ultimately, we don't have any difference with anybody, any faith whatsoever. Because we believe that the ultimate thing is that one where all gods, goddesses, all they can be subsumed there. You see, that's the practical relevance of Vedanta. A lot of people have these doubts, which god to worship, Hanumanji or Durgaji or Kali or Vishnu or Ram. Vedanta solves it at one go, saying, you do anything. How does it matter? Ultimately, you will have to travel on a path where this bheda between you and God is not discarded, but it's taken to the next level of illumination where it becomes sarva bheda varjitaha. Your love is free from all dualities. That love is not different from the wisdom you have. See how beautifully they're taking it. At that ultimate level, that sarvatmaka bhava you have, your love is no more play of emotions or any biochemical changes in your body that you're trembling because your friend is going away, you're angry. These things are dropped. You have that perfect state of illumination and wisdom. That state itself is the ultimate expression of love, right? And what is sambandha? Once you identified with everything, if we can identify with the whole universe as one, there is no ethical consideration. Now, when coming back to this level, that foundational illumination forms the basis of our ethical behavior. We need to love each other. Why? They are not different from us. We are the same one thing which are appearing. It's like multiple water bubbles on the surface of the sea. It's just one thing. That gives us a new kind of warmth. Okay? So therefore, he's beautifully saying, Tatra Suddha Suddha Maya Vidya Upadhitvena Bheda Vyavahara Hetuhu. Maya and Avidya. Ishvara, Maya. Maya Upahita Chaitanya. What is Upadhi that I have discussed many times? It's like a title, it's like a wrapper, it's like a label. That Maya, with that particular thing, that designation, that naming, that becomes Ishvara. Jadugar, he plays that Jadu, and Thakur Ramakrishna used to say that Jadu is a lie. Jadugar is the only truth. What he shows you not real, he is real. Similarly, the avidya, the ajnana is not real. Then what are we fighting about? Why we are trying to seek liberation? Liberation from ajnana, and ajnana is not real. Vedanti smiles and says, look here, my boy, this ajnana, if it were real, you cannot have liberation. If the ghost who is there in a room to trouble you is real, you have any freedom? He'll chase you. No, it's just a presumption I had, and I was scared of spirits haunting my house, and now I am free from it. No, they didn't even exist. Therefore, he's saying avidya. So that is how we will take that. Basically, Vedanta is about fighting our presumptions and prejudices and our old sanskaras and habits. So, suddho maya vidya upadhitvena veda vyavahara hetu suddho to avheda vyavahara hetu. So, in this Paramatman, there is no bheda, there is avheda, there is no duality, there is no diversity. Then he says, tatha anatmapi trividaha. Anatma, you remember we did Viveka Chudamani, Sthula, Sukshma, Karana, Vedat. You have Sthula Sarira, you have Sukshma Sarira, and you have Karana Sarira, the Vijatmaga Bhava, the causal aspect. And these things will come again in great elaboration as we move forward. So Sthula, and then we have saying karma is of three kinds, right? Punya, Papa, and a Mishra. You do Punya karmas, you'll be reborn as a Devata or an angel. You do Papa karma, you'll be a tree or a plant or animal. And then if you do Mishra, mixed, you're Manushya. And then depending on the overload of Papa or Punya, the mixture depends on where you are placed and what you are enjoying and what you are experiencing in life and how you are being able to do sadhana for the next step. That is more critical. So he's basically saying, Tayoho bivakastu moksha karanamiti dik. Now this chit and jada, sentient and non-sentient, conscious and inert, or not conscious. If you are being able to properly distinguish them, but we cannot. And that is why we get trapped and we learn to identify. We learn actually. This is a process of education and acculturation, is to actually strengthen some wrong, prejudiced understanding of the reality. And we strongly identify with this. We are unable to distinguish between chit and jada. Buddhi is not conscious, it's jada. Why? Because we are being able to say, my buddhi, mera buddhi kharab ho gayi thi. Whether it's thoughts about your emotions, they don't have agency. And then Vedanta will ultimately explain to us, as we have done in Viveka Chudamani, that agency itself is born out of a misunderstanding. That there will go, the ahankara and mamakara. What is the understanding of agency? How to make use of this agency, to discard this agency, that is Vedanta. If we rightly understand, then like for example, a person has a job. You can use that assignment to get a better job, or you can use that assignment to buy a lot of things and make more loans, and then if he loses his job, he's in deep, he's in very big problem. So every opportunity is a risk. So we are going to go to the next level, and therefore he's saying, because we cannot have that viveka, we are trapped because of lack of right understanding. And if we have proper viveka, proper discrimination, right kind of understanding, we ascend to the next level. Therefore, he's saying, Tayoho vivekastu moksha karanamiti dik. This is the wisdom approach. He's not saying, of course, Ishwara prasadat Vedanta agraha. Even you are interested in Vedanta is because of grace of God and because of a lot of punyas you have done. Otherwise, you are not going to come here. Spoiling one Saturday evening, you could have jolly well gone somewhere and have some snacks with your family, or watched a TV program. You could have talked to some people. Because past punyas, this satsanga also is not possible. So he's saying that this is the wisdom approach. He's saying viveka hatu moksha karanam, having right understanding. Tatra tavad ahang savadena dehatraya visishtatvena asuddha jivaha. The moment you say aham, that is the asuddha jiva. It's not perfect. It's tainted. It's colored. Okay? So he's saying, because of this, asuddha jivaha asya eva akrushtatvat tang namami. Where this is what is in problem. We are in problem. Therefore, we are doing this Mangalacharanam. Worshipping whom? Sriharim. Why? Because he's Sarvatkrishta, the most superior. And what is the meaning of this Sri Hari? He beautifully says, he's saying, Swa asrayataya sriyate swikriyate pralaya susuptyadau sarvabhute iti. If you look at it, when we go to deep sleep or in pralaya, we don't exist. What exists? Okay, all of us will get into kind of like, you become encrypted and you are there in data sheet, you are there in the computer, in the hard disk. Somewhere in the corner of it, you are lying asleep. And then you open the computer, it comes back. Similarly, Pralaya Avastha is like putting the whole Srishti to sleep. You again open it, it comes back alive. And Bhagavan cannot create samsara on his own, as Shastra says, because Bhagavan doesn't have ahankara, mamakara, he's not a jiva, he has no karmas. Then how he can create? What is the explanation? Our karmas. Veda says this. The Upanishads also say this, that based on our papunya karmas, Bhagavan can come taking avatara, as he explained in Bhagavad Gita, and even the Srishti is created based on our karmas. Whatever we do fructifies into the reality in which we think we are trapped. Actually, we have created it. Therefore, he's saying, Maya Tatkarya, there is a faulty understanding. What will be the consequence of that faulty understanding? A few wrong decisions in life. Maya Tatkarya, Ajnana Tatkarya, when we have ignorance or whatever we refer to as ignorance, what is the karya of this ignorance? Well, we suffer, we have anxiety, we have misunderstanding, we have sukha, dukkha, anubhava, aham sukhi, aham dukhi, I'm not happy. All these are following from a faulty understanding. So Bhagavan is able to remove ajnana and its products, the mother and its children. The children is our diversified experience of life. All our sukhas and dukkhas, anxieties and tensions and excitement, dreams and fantasies, everything is, these are coming out of what? A primarily misunderstood entry into the whole samsara. Bhagavan will remove that misunderstanding. It is like what we are in sleep and we are seeing a tiger which is chasing us and we are anxious and we are blabbering in dream, right? And what does the mom do? Comes and pats the baby. What happened? Why are you crying? There's a tiger. There's no one. This is the bedroom. The baby wakes up. The mother gives a little water or milk and says, would you like to go to the loo? Then hugs the baby and the baby goes to sleep. Why it goes to sleep? Reassurance. My mother is with me. There's no tiger. And it's such, I was seeing something faulty. The child realizes this. That is why the fear is removed. Similarly, the cause of our fear is this avidya, ignorance. Bhagavan with his, now you will ask me this question, okay, so go back to bhakti. What is this whole business of Vedanta? In Vedantic practice, they are all integral. You do nishkama karma, Bhagavan said in Bhagavad Gita, you do upasana, purify yourself. This is not this or the other. This is this and then the other. Then after this, you have a next step. So he's saying Sri Harimiti. So Bhagavan Sro Asrayataya Sriyate Sarva Bhutehi iti Sri Jivatva Upadhi Bhuta Avidya Tam Harati. Bhagavan, that avidya, because of which we are what we are, he will remove it. Hari. Harati iti Hari. He is the guy who removes all your obstacles, your ignorance. All the time you say Om Hari, Hari Om. Why this Hari Hi Om all the time? Why do they say this Hari Sabda? Kindly remove my ignorance, my arrogance, my all kinds of delusions, self-conceit, whatever I have. So, and then not only that, he also removes the products of this ignorance that we have. That is why he's saying Sri Harim. And then there's an additional word called Paramanandam. Once I'm being able to remove these backlog of bad sanskaras and papas and all that, I am free from the delusion of being trapped. That is a conception that I have. So when I'm free from this, he's saying Paramanandam, but I have ice cream, I get a lot of ananda. I watch some, National Geographic documentaries. Wonderful. You see some good movies, very funny, nice movies. They are wonderful movies. You get Ananda. He's saying no. We're talking about Paramananda. There is no Ananda beyond this. All these Anandas are anitya. They are for a few minutes. Movie is over. And then what? While going to sleep, suddenly you get a reminder. Okay, your presentation tomorrow, 11 o'clock. All your happiness is gone. Beautiful movie you watched. You watched maybe a very old, nice movie like what is this, good, the bad, the ugly, and the ugly, and then you are laughing to yourself, and suddenly there's a message. Okay, this delegation is coming, you have to make a presentation. Then you go back to your table, you have to quickly look at your PowerPoint, you have to tune it up. You have to make your presentation. This Niratisaya Paramanandam, because it will give you no more any pain, because Ahankar Mamakaran is gone, so who is going to experience that pain? Paramanandam, and then he adds one thing. As I told you, Sukha Anubhava is also Ananda. He's saying, no, Upadeshtaram is Chaitanya Swarupa, gives you the advice, and that is the beautiful thing in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan is omnipotent. He could have jolly well patted Arjuna, and Arjuna would have felt all powerful, and he could have won the war. He didn't do it. He explained everything. He's the right parent. A lot of parents do homework for their children. Krishna didn't do it. He didn't know homework for Arjuna. He explained to him, enabled him. If anyone asks you about, give us a good example of empowerment. The empowerment approach is there in Bhagavad Gita. Bhagavan empowered Arjuna with some understanding so that he is able to deal with his own stress. That is the right kind of counseling or coaching or whatever you receive in your corporates. And then Ishwaram, he's the boss. Sarvanyantara, he's a Sarvanyamaka. Vyapakam, and he's not limited. Is Vyapakam Sarvalokanam Karanam, and is the cause of all this Matya Swarga Patala everywhere. He is the main cause, and therefore he's saying Sarvalokanam Karanam. Paramanandam. So, what is Parama? He's saying Abhinasitva Niratisaitva. Abhinasitva, that means it is Nitya. There is no Vinasa of this Ananda. Niratisayatva, there is no Ananda which is better than this. Because of that, it is most superior Ananda you are explaining. And how Bhagavan can advise us? You are saying he's Suddha Chaitanya, it doesn't have a name or a form, Nirguna Nirakara. No, he has given the Vedas, or the Upanishads, the wisdom texts he has given, and then there is a Acharya Parampara. That is why we always say Sankaram Sankaracharyam. Why do we say this? Because the Guru Parampara, for us, the individual gurus in Vedanta are important. Obviously, our parents wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have grandparents. We do bow down to the grandparents if they are alive, and also our parents. But we nevertheless, all the time, remember, what's your clan name? Where do you come from? The whole parampara. Without them, who are you? You not even exist. So this Guru Parampara is important in our spiritual tradition. It's not about an individual guru who is very charismatic. Of course, you have these charismatic gurus because of whom because of their spell, a certain phase in history was illuminated by their contribution. And therefore, we remember them. The Guru Parampara is because they also received the light from their ancestors. So the Guru Parampara, he's saying through them, Chidrupam Ityarthaha. And he's saying Vyapakam means what? Desa Parichinna Sunya, Desa Paricheda Sunya. It's not local, it's always non-local, it's everywhere. So this particular word removes any doubt we may have that Bhagwan se milne jana hai, so we'll go to temple. Where is he? He's in the temple, he's in the mosque, he's in the church. Some people look up, some people look down, some people close eyes. There is no place where he doesn't exist. Vyapakam. And then he says what? Bhagavan, out of his own adhisthana, that reality, we know that our philosophy is called Vivartavada. It's a projection. The reality is a projection, which is a kind of an inverted projection. Inversion, if if something is written like it is a 6, you read it from the other side, it looks like a 9. That Suddha Satta looks like the Sansara. Therefore, he's explaining that Sarvalokanam Karanam. So it is the cause of everything. Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana. We have dealt with it many times. If you look at this spider, how does it weave the net? It borrows some cotton from somewhere? No, it uses its own saliva. And then it weaves this net to catch the insects, flies, etc. Sansara, this is the example given that Bhagavan is Abhinna Nimitta Upadana Karana. Abhinna means not different. Now, if you have this pen, what is the Upadana Karana, material cause? So there is some metal, there is some plastic. So these are the material causes. What is the Nimitta Karana or the efficient cause? The machine, or indirectly you can finally trace it to the engineers who make it. The engineer who invented that machine where this pen is fashioned, it's assembly line production. Bhagavan, like the potter, pot and clay. Pot is made out of clay, but there's a potter. And then there are other tools that are used for this purpose. There is something called vyapara. There is something called these tools and techniques that he uses, the wheel and stuff like that. So he's the nimitta karana kulara. Upadana karana is that clay out of which this is made. But in case of Bhagavan, there will be dvaitapatti. There is Bhagavan and also there is reality out of which he created it. Like in Bible it says, God created man, made man in his own image out of clay. Where was the clay? For Advaita Vedanta, clay cannot exist. There is no separate clay. And then how does Bhagavan create? On a Sunday, he took his time off to create this samsara. He created in 8 days. That's why Genesis says, no, none of these are there. Of course, we have our own stories about Srishtis, but ultimately the Vedanta says the Srishti, regarding Srishti, these all stories about creation are stories. Because there are multiple stories. Don't take them too seriously. The purpose is not to make you believe in the story. The purpose is to help you recognize the source of all the stories. That is the ultimate truth. That is what we are interested in. Then we are having a lot of explanation in the class, and finally the professor writes that conclusion. Then he gives different prakriyas, right? Do you remember all that? You only remember the particular formula that is derived. The details, only if you become a professor, you will again do it. You need the principles for applying them in your mathematical or whatever calculations. You don't remember how they are calculated, how you reach that conclusion. That is there in the classroom. Similarly, Srishti is not important. The importance lies in drawing our attention and its focus away from the immediate reality to the ultimate nature of what appears as this immediate reality. The ultimate nature of what manifests and appears as our reality. What manifests as our reality is what we call Srishti. What we are not being able to see is the source out of which all this manifests. And this whole book, AparokshaAnubhuti, will drive us towards that ultimate hidden principle out of which all these are manifested. So he says, Vyakam. So Bhagavan, he mentions, Desa Kaladi Maikatvad Anantamityarthaha. So all these Desa Kala, we also go to temple, we also go to church or mosque or whatever. This is Upadhi. These are designations. These are ways of, as I keep giving this particular example, if somebody says, why to worship these gods and goddesses, what we get out of it? He said, how do you relate to God? You have to connect with something, some symbol. Either you deal with the deity, or you deal with a cross, or you deal with some text which is written. The Holy Quran, some statements. You anyway are dealing with some form to reach the formless. And that is the only way that you are available with, because you have these eyes and the senses, and your system works with names and forms. You'll ultimately go there, like in arithmetic in school we used to do. Let's presume the value of that variable is x. We don't know. We say that x, and then we do the calculation, and finally we get the value of it. So he's saying these are imaginary. We of course go to Rath Yatra and Jagannath Ji comes. Jagannath Ji is there. There are different ways in which you make sense of that statement. Rathitu Vamanam Drushta Punarjanmana Bhavet. No, Punarjanmana will not happen if you have Atma Drishti. Ratha is this body, Vamanam is that Jivatma that you see, the Paramatma. If you see the Pratyagatma in you, then of course you have Atma Jnana, so you're not going to come. Not by going to Rath Yatra, but that is the Stuti. So they are always there are layers and layers of meaning in every spiritual statement. So that's why Bhagavan is saying. So to conclude the first verse, we are doing Mangalacharanam, and all these things are mentioned. The Anubandha Chatushta, which we'll take up tomorrow. I deliberately went a little slow today because it's the first class, and we sort of have to come back. It's like warming up, and we'll catch up on speed slowly. So Bhagavan Bhashyakara Sankaracharya, there's a bit of controversy whether he has written it or some other Sankaracharya. Makes no difference. Maybe one of his disciples has written it, because this is all an academic exercise. This is subject matter of the professorial engagement. Some believe he wrote, some people believe he did not. Like there's a lot of academic debate on whether Mahabharata was written by one person or many persons, whether Manusmriti was written by one guy or many guys. Manu was a king, maybe he hired some Brahmins and others who sat together and compiled it. Maybe a few verses were added. You have very progressive, very philosophical verses, and you have a few regressive verses, and this text is demonized because of those regressive verses. But they are wonderful verses if you read the book. Like Aristotle made a few funny statements like women have 30 teeth, men have 32 teeth. Have you heard of it? I've read it myself. And then that men at about 58 or something, men about, when they are about 37, they should marry a girl who is about 18. Why? They said, what is the sexual activity? Men are active for a long time. Women cease to produce children. So women cannot produce in Greek society maybe about 45, 50. So men were able to produce maybe about 73 or something. So he wanted that age gap. Today's society, imagine, it will be atrocious. But we don't discard Aristotle, we read him. There are so many beautiful things to read and learn. But then, that is called prejudice. We don't want to read a text. We just demonize, discard it, because that is the nature of this game called politics of knowledge. But that's a different issue. So here, he's slowly sort of trying to take us towards that. I'll stop here, and we will do that old Santi Mantra, Purnamidam Purnamadaha. And from tomorrow onwards, I hope you'll remember the first verse, because that is going to be our Mangalacharana. That is the main Santi Mantra, followed by the Guru Pranama, and then we'll proceed. So, any questions? One or two questions I can take. Anybody has any questions? Yeah, please speak. Just a minute. I'll